For so long in my life, I believed this narrative that no one was coming to save me. I grew up in a household that externally looked perfectly Christian, but internally that was not the case. Internally it was full of emotional neglect, mental health issues, and substance abuse. From a young age, I really just had to grow up. Something that, honestly, I worshiped, and there were times where I would have to take my little brother to practice, take my sister to dance, provide them dinner, and then on the flip side of it, have to protect them from seeing what made me grow up. There were moments that were really tough in my life, but I had no really idea how to process anything, and really no desire to process anything. That's not something that I thought was normal, and it's, as a guy, I kind of took pride in no one's coming to save me. By the age of 14, I started to indulge in every worldly thing. I started to numb myself with substances, alcohol, really whatever I could get my hands on. Then later on in high school, around the age 17, 18, there was an incident where something happened with a parent, and it caused me to go dark. There were things that were said that should never be said to a child. From that point on, I couldn't love. I couldn't have really any positive emotion, because I wanted to dwell on the suffering side of it, because I didn't know that there was any other way to life. After a while, my dad started really reaching out to me and going through that this is something as Christians we're called to do, which is forgive. I didn't want that, because at that point I feel like I had lost if I forgave. But I realized if forgiving was what being a Christian looked like, then I wanted nothing to do with it at all. And I wore that as a badge of honor. Coming into college, wanted to make a name for myself quickly, and I did. Joined a fraternity and continued living just a convictionless life. And doing life with Redmond and Carlson. Redmond invited me to church March 19th, and Redmond being Redmond, brought us to the second row, and which in the moment I hated. But that was the first time I was really sober and able to feel conviction, and I saw the gospel presented in a clear way, and I knew from that point that this was something that I wanted. I knew there was something there in that, so I started attending regularly with both of these guys.
I was in this group at the time, and Eli's name just kept popping up in my head, and I would share with the group, and whether it was in a positive direction or a negative direction, he was a leader, and he had an influence over a group of people that I just didn't have. And we knew if God could get a hold of his heart, and if he could start walking with Jesus, that it was going to impact a huge amount of people.
The invitation from Redmond was a great jump start. It was something that I needed, but it wasn't where my relationship with the Lord started. Going through the rest of that school year, went to church with the guys, but as they left for the summer and I stayed in Auburn, I was not going to go to church by myself. That was not something I was ready for, and just not something I felt worthy of. So I started hanging around again with the wrong crowd, doing things that brought me comfort, and just again avoiding conviction. Mistake after mistake led me to a dark spot, and it made me realize that I was becoming one of my parents, and it kind of just destroyed me. And at that point, I didn't want to keep fighting that fight of that just like being 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And it got to the point where it was so bad that I told myself that night that I was going to take my life. But an unbeliever, 3 minutes before the planned time to take my life, texted me and said, "Last night was not cool, pray about it." And that rocked me. I can't articulate it any better than it rocked me. And I can't really put into words how I felt, but I was distraught. I was in awe that the Lord was working in my life. It was something I didn't think was possible. It was a feeling that I didn't know was there, but it was the feeling that I'd been looking for in every substance I'd used. And it made me realize that the Lord's coming after me. Like, he is inviting me, and he's been here with me the whole time. There were multiple times where I battled with the Lord for full surrender because I knew that's something he was calling me to. But Carlson was there for me almost every time. And he always wanted to know how I was doing with it, always asked questions that I honestly just didn't want to answer. But he brought a sense of accountability that I kind of resented him for, honestly, because I didn't want that accountability at the time. But the night that I decided to give my life to the Lord, luckily I lived right across the street from Carlson, so I went over there just in a spot of like, okay, like I need help with this, like what does this look like? And went through, read some scripture, and he kind of just walked me through what this meant, and gave my life to the Lord that night.
We talk a lot about discipleship in this group and about how it doesn't have to be this formal thing where you say you're going to meet with this guy at this time each week, but it's just about being a friend to him. And Eli and I weren't great friends, but around that time, I would just start reaching out and just hanging out with him. And through that, he knew that, I was there for him if he needed anything. He knew that if he was going through anything that was good or bad, that I wanted to be that guy that he came to. And so I didn't really do anything. I just prayed for opportunities, and those came. He would come over and we would talk, and I just remember one night vividly, he came over and he was like, I've tried everything, every drug, every form of pleasure the world has to offer, and the past few days of chasing Jesus has just beat all of it.
Being able to experience the community that God's placed around me, it has made me really feel the need for more gospel community in life. There are plenty of people just like me that this is something that they need, and which is why this group, when we've taken it upon ourselves to really be intentional, to build relationships, to pray over people, and to be there for them like Carlson was for me, and Redmond, and Bryce, and Riley. And now it's time to work. The job's not finished. It's not even close.